Why is Hedron so important? And like, how does it help promote Hex? Is it meant to reward hexagons, or is this like a completely foundational ecosystem on its own? How do you think about Hedron?
I think of the way I think about Hedron is that with Hex, Richard Hart set up the game board, and Hedron and Maxi are the real first two kind of pieces that have been placed on that chessboard, because they both don't have admin keys, just like Hex, and because they're built on top of Hex, meaning that it's necessary for Hex to exist for them to exist. I think, to be perfectly honest, I think Alex, who's the Hedron developer, he's up there, like with Richard, in terms of genius and innovation kind of level. He's doing some amazing things. Like, he's forking in Fura at the moment. He's building his own data center that he's going to have his own backup power for, to like run pulse nodes and stuff like that. He's doing some amazing stuff for the community. And the stuff that he's come up with Hedron is, I think, as innovative as Hex was. And with ICOSA, maybe even more so. Not necessarily, yeah. And I'd like to talk more about that.
Yeah, what is ICOSA like? How's that going to play out with Hedron and all that?
Yeah, okay, it's really interesting. So let's assume that everyone here in this chat knows exactly what Hedron is, because you need to understand Hex to understand Hedron, and you need to understand Hedron in order to understand ICOSA.
Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that people understand Hex. They understand the share system in Hex. I'll assume that they understand Hedron, the basics of Hedron. And so what is ICOSA? ICOSA is basically a way to pump Hex and Hedron. And the way it does that is through allowing people to stake either Hedron or ICOSA. Actually, there are three pools. There are three staking pools in the ICOSA system. You can stake your Hedron. When you stake your Hedron, you're going to get back ICOSA, okay, as a reward. You can stake ICOSA. When you stake ICOSA, you get ICOSA and you get Hedron as a reward. And then the third pool is this NFT pool, in which case everyone is pouring money like ETH and USDC and Hex and I guess Hedron. I'm not sure what else. I think that's those ones that are what's being accepted. And whatever USD value that pool has, you will have a proportion of that you donated. So let's say you donated $100 and the whole pool is $1,000 US, so you'll have 10%. So you get an NFT that represents 10% of that pool. Okay, and then over time, at any time you can burn that NFT, and burning that NFT pays you all the yield that was accrued, which was your share of the pool. Okay, so over time, every day, ICOSA is accrued to each account in that pool, and so when you burn it, you can get all that yield. But what you could also do with that NFT is just sell it, like on OpenSea or something. So this is an NFT which has accrued this much ICOSA and will be accruing more ICOSA into the future. It will have some sort of price associated with it. And then for the people who do burn it to collect the yield, that means that they're burning their share of the pool. And therefore, the people who are left in that pool are going to be earning more of a percentage or more of a share of the ICOSA that's generated for that pool. So it's a little bit of a game of chicken in a way. Although people are going to be able to sell the NFTs as well instead of just burning them. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of burning, because why would you burn something which is earning money just to give other people an advantage? But who knows what happens over time, and as those get burnt, then the people who stay in there for longer, they will accrue more and more ICOSA. So
is the gamification and type stuff with ICOSA, is that, people say, I think the biggest criticism of Hedron, maybe if you could dumb it down in one sentence, well, it's condemned forever. Is ICOSA meant to sort of like address some of that, or and taking it the most generous way possible? Like, does it help reduce the sell pressure and things like that, or is it doing different directions?
Yeah, it definitely does. Let's go through them all. Okay, so let's go through the other two staking pools. The other two staking pools are just staking Hedron and just staking ICOSA. When you just stake your Hedron, you're basically locking up all of that Hedron. So locking up that Hedron is going to,
reduce
that supply of Hedron won't be there to be able to be sold for certain periods of time. So, and you'll be able to, collect ICOSA as you go. Then with the ICOSA trade, the ICOSA staking, the way you get ICOSA in that pool is that you swap an HSI. So an HSI is like a hex stake made through the Hedron contract.
Mm-hmm.
That HSI is sent to the ICOSA pool, the ICOSA contract. In return, you will get for that, depending on how much Hedron that could be borrowed from that divided by the share rate is how much, by the hex share rate is how much ICOSA you will get. Then that Hedron, which is borrowed, that is what's paid to the ICOSA stakers. So that won't be necessarily a lot of money. But what's going to happen is because people are getting all of these HSIs, that's going to then all of those will go to auction because they're being liquidated by the ICOSA contract and then sent to auction after 90 days. Someone comes in and can buy that for a very, very small amount, or relatively small amount of Hedron, but obviously it'll be bid up probably to around the price. And then all of that, of how much it costs to make that hex stake or whatever, and then all of that Hedron is getting burnt.
Okay.
So, and the other thing is that because all of these let's say you have 100 people make an HSI and send it to the contract. Then in 90 days, you'll have 100 HSIs coming up for auction. Or if you have 1,000 people making HSIs, you'll have 1,000 people sending 1,000 HSIs coming up for auction in 3 months' time, in 90 days. And so any Hedron paid for those is going to be burned, but also people are going to be spending they're going to be they're going to be spending that Hedron. I guess it's burnt, so I guess it's the same thing. But it's basically taking Hedron off the market, and then only
So I like the fact that it piggybacks on the liquidation auctions. I think that's an interesting way to play off of the Hedron's native features already.
Yeah, and anyone is going to be able to do that at any time, even after in a year or 2 years' time, you'll be able to make an HSI, send it to that contract to get ICOSA. So that's probably the quickest way to get the most. Actually, I don't know. There's too many variables. But yeah, so that's why I think it's, and because these people are incentivized to make these HSIs, that's a whole lot of hex getting locked up for 15 years as well. So you have a whole lot of hex getting locked up for 15 years. You have a lot of Hedron getting burnt. You have a whole lot of Hedron getting locked up. People are highly incentivized to lock up ICOSA as well. And so, I think what Alex has created is kind of genius level, to be perfectly honest. And when I first when he first just started describing it all, and I was just like, oh, what's all this? It's very hard to wrap your head around the whole thing. It's really taken me a couple of weeks of coming back, asking stupid questions, and then realizing, oh, that was a stupid question. Really just kind of, and I even had to draw it out visually for myself. There are some graphics going to be coming out to help explain it to people. But it's definitely I think it's going to be bullish for Hedron and ICOSA and Hex, and over the short term and the long term. Let me give you a bit of alpha. Here's the alpha.
Okay.
So each of these three pools, the way they get ICOSA is by how much Hedron is burnt in the system divided by the hex share share rate. Now, the hex share rate at the moment it's like what 22,800 hex per T share. So for the contract, it'll be divided by 228,000 by 228,000. So whatever and so whatever Hedron is burnt in the system, see what happens is because we've had Hedron going for a while and a whole lot of Hedron has already been burnt. There's about 20 trillion, I think, Hedron that has already been burnt. And so that 20 trillion that is divided by the hex share rate to give out to as ICOSA, that's going to be distributed in the first 90 days. So for the first 90 days, people are going to be highly incentivized to be in these pools. And especially, I think, the HSI, the ICOSA one, because you'll send an HSI and that will immediately get you ICOSA. And remember, it's going to be the amount of Hedron that's borrowed on that HSI divided by the hex share rate. And that's going to give you a lot of ICOSA. Then because like if you have a certain percentage of the total ICOSA, like depending on whether you're a squid, blah blah blah, they'll have different terms for those as well. But basically, you'll have to lock up. The bigger you have, the more of a bonus you'll get, but also the longer it will have to be locked up for. And so I think that because that 20 trillion that's already been burned is going to be distributed over the first 90 days, I think that pool is going to earn a lot of ICOSA in the early days. The Hedron staking, because there's so many more people with Hedron, I think because you're getting that, how much ICOSA you get will be dependent on, that how much is, so you'll just be getting a little, you won't be able to get as big a share because there'll be so many people staking Hedron. And so that will pay a little bit less than that, but it'll depend on how many other people are going into that pool. And then the NFT pool is another thing, which I think people are going to be highly incentivized to get in on day one. There's going to be a lot of day one promo to get into these things because you want to start earning immediately, especially from this greater kind of pool.
That's what I wanted to ask too. Like, how can people get started early in this? Like, what is the process for participating?
There's so many ways to play this. Look, basically anyone who has a hex stake can mint Hedron. And so either you could buy Hedron and just stake it, or you could mint some Hedron you have from some of your stakes and you could stake that. You could just hold it and then wait 90 days and see if you can pick up cheap hex stakes in the auctions. Like if you have 1,000 HSIs being auctioned on one day, 90 days from, or within a few days, like around 90 days after the launch of ICOSA, there's going to be opportunities there to pick up some really cheap hex stakes. And so even just holding your Hedron for those auctions might be a really good play.